Hi, sorry that took me a second.
Yeah,
How are you?
I am good. Yeah.
Well, welcome to Restart Revolution. Today, our interview is a little different than our usual. We will be talking to Polina, who is a Ukrainian student who has recently left her home. So, could you just start by introducing yourself, giving a bit of background on where you're from and who you are?
Yeah. So my name is Polina, and I'm an international student, meaning that I grew up in France, but I left France when I was like 8 years old, and I've been living in a bunch of different countries. And so this year I moved to Ukraine, and it was my first time actually living in Ukraine. But yeah, I'm from Ukraine, like because my parents are Ukrainian and because all my family lives there. But officially, it was my first time living there. Yes.
Yeah. So, could you start by explaining a bit about what your life was like before tensions arose in Ukraine and before you had to leave?
I mean, it was a normal life, and Kiev was my favorite place where I lived because it just has a certain authenticity to it, and it's a very beautiful city. And I love the architecture, I love the culture, the food. It was, but also it's hard to say that there was no tensions because really the tensions arose in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, and so from that there was always a war going on in the Donbas region. It was not really on people's mind, like not something you talk about every day. But then, of course, that changed.
What was your experience like having to leave Ukraine? And could you talk a bit about maybe the days leading up to it and how leaving your home actually was for you?
So it was actually, I'm sitting here in a very privileged position because we left before the airspace closed, so we just took the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was thinking we actually went on vacation and so I only have summer clothes with me because we were not thinking
Oh,
it was going to be that serious. We thought, okay, there might be like tensions for 2 to 3 weeks, and all my school left the same way. But then the war started when I was on vacation, and
mhm.
so of course we were not prepared to end up in France right now. And I was just leaving, thinking, okay, it's something, and now I don't know when I will come back to Ukraine, really.
Yeah. And how has your life looked since you left Ukraine? What have your experiences been since then?
Okay, so well, you wake up, you call your family, you make sure they're alive, you check the news, you go your breakfast, you check the news again, then you have classes. I have online classes. I check the news during them. Then you take dinner and you talk about the news with your parents. Then
Mm-hmm.
you call your family again, you make sure they have water, electricity, food, and then you go to sleep. And if you didn't have dreams about the war, you can consider yourself lucky. So that's what.
And just out of curiosity, is the school that you're currently attending, is that in Ukraine?
Yes, it's in Kiev, and it's the PSI International School.
Hmm, and the classes are still running. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, we and some of my classmates were still in Kiev, and it's like, oh, time to go to the bunkers right now because there's an aerial. It was very, even a little bit funny, but then you understand that it's actually happening. It's not just a meme. It's not like something you see in the movie. It's your classmates or like people which just trace the entire country in like 3 days, and you sit there and it's like, okay, this is our new reality.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds really intense. I can imagine.
Yeah.
While we were corresponding, you mentioned that some of your family lives in Russia and that your family is sort of divided on that front. Could you talk a bit more about that and what the situation has looked like for your family?
Well, of course, it's going to be divided because when part of your family, like my grandma, has been seeing literal combats in front of her window, and then the other side is like, no, there is no war. We're not targeting civilians. This is just a military operation, and they really believe it. It's it's hard to debate with them because really there's three types of people in Russia. There's those who think there's no war, and these it's the hardest to tell them anything. There are those who are just not informed, but
Mm-hmm.
give them the information, they will like believe you. And then there's those who are just like, yeah, let's kill the entirety of Ukraine. And that's like just, yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
small percentage is against the war. And we cannot say that all Russians, think Ukrainians are Nazis. But unfortunately, it's a small percentage because still there's like 80 to 90% that support Putin and his regime.
Yeah, and there's been crazy propaganda in Russia now to the point where people have no idea what's going on and their perception of what's going on is so skewed. Yeah.
They're part of my family, and when you send them something, they're like, oh, this looks like the same building all over the time. Here's a website which tells you, a Russian government website which tells you whether or not this information is true or false, and they really believe it. And it's so hard to just tell them, yeah, this is what we see from their window, like.
Yeah, wow. And well, obviously you have negative feelings about the war going on right now, and I think as does everyone. But what what are your fears and what are your hopes for the future? What do you think that the situation will look like a week from now or a month from now? And what are you particularly scared about?
Well, my hopes, I really hope that Putin dies. And millions of Ukrainians hope that too. I hope this stops because I want to come back home. I want to finish my diploma. Like, I want my family to be safe. And it's a very normal feeling, I guess. But also, I wish that Ukraine would be considered a sovereign country and that millions of Russians would understand that it has its own culture, its own history, and that lots of them have access to other resources, other sources than the Russian government. And I just wish people would actually use them because
Yeah.
it takes so little, but words are the only weapon we have right now.
Wow. Yeah. And do you know, so do you have a house in Kiev and do you know what the state of it is?
Yes, well, I live in the center of Kiev, and yeah, I am a bit worried. I hope that because all our stuff is there, but really, we're more worried about our family right now. But we don't know when we will come back. So far, the center has been untouched, thank God, because the President Zelensky's like place, I don't know how that is called, is not so far from our place. Therefore, we know it's quite secured. But for example, where my cousin lives, her village, which is near Kiev, there has been like bombs, and one hit like a house near theirs, and so that's just terrifying seeing the pictures because I've been there too. And when you've been there, when you see the place, it becomes much more personal than just seeing an image and you don't know where that is.
For sure, yeah. And do you have any family members or friends who are having to serve now in the military?
No, right now, no, but I know that we have our closest friends, well, the husband of my mom's best friend really wants to go, but of course, no one really lets their family member because it's hard, but they had the chance to leave and they decided to stay for their family. So sometimes we also feel guilty for leaving, but at the same time, there's little you can do while staying, so.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really hard situation. And yeah, I think it's really important that accurate information is put out there. I mean, obviously, very inaccurate information is being spread in Russia, but in among news sources in the rest of the world, I think it's really important that people stay informed and hear stories like yours of real people who are, just like us, students who are just trying to, finish school, but this major event is happening to you. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's really difficult.
we're almost like refugees. We are refugees, just in a very privileged position right now. But yeah, no one in my school really knows what will happen with their diploma. Like, everything is so unstable now, and we're in that gray area where, okay, where bombs aren't dropping, on the sky, and it's safe, but it's not safe for the future, and you never know what's happening. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unless there's anything else that you want to add before we end, I think that's it. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, but thank you for listening and inviting just students. It's a nice, yeah. I
Thank you
hope
so
I will
much
to
for it.
write.
I know it must be really difficult because this is obviously such a intense conflict, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing this for me and for everyone else who's watching. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Goodbye.